Got the house to myself, the game on the big screen, 2 beers down, and more chilling in the mini cooler right next to my lazy boy when the phone rings. It better not be a telemarketer or a robocall. It was around 8 p.m. on a Wednesday. My wife, Isabella, often worked late on Wednesdays, so I always planned a night of fun or relaxation. Tonight was a chill night in. I had devoured a medium meats pizza from Papa John's with a couple of beers, then settled in to watch the Cubs game, sipping on more Coronas. With 2 more in the cooler beside me and another 6 in the fridge, the night was shaping up nicely. Isabella would be home around 10, take a quick shower, and we'd be spooning by 11. Wednesdays were usually quiet at the Johnsons'. This phone call, though, felt like it was about to ruin my vibe. But being the responsible guy I am, I answered it. It was Emily Johnson, the wife of Isabella's boss, John. She was practically hysterical. Apparently, John had a heart attack while working with Isabella. My wife called 911, and the paramedics rushed him to the hospital in bad shape. Emily told me Isabella went with John in the ambulance and needed a ride home since Emily planned to stay with John. I told her I was on my way and wished John the best. John had been Isabella's boss for 22 years. She started working for his software company right out of college and had become his right-hand person, his work wife. I was already dating Isabella when she joined John's company, and over the years, our families had spent time together. He seemed like a good guy. Isabella always said he was a great boss, and he took care of her in the paycheck department too. John, a French citizen, is 55, about 10 years older than Isabella and me. He's a handsome guy who keeps in shape, with a dynamic personality that draws people in. Both men and women gravitate to him. While I know that fate doesn't care how well you take care of yourself, I was still surprised to hear he'd had a heart attack. I parked my car in the visitor's lot near the emergency room, walked in, and asked about John. I explained to the nurse that I was the husband of the woman who came in with him and was looking for her. As I said this, I noticed a pair of EMTs to my right. One nudged the other and whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "Cuck's here. Wonder which way this'll go." Although he was looking in my direction, I had no idea what he meant by cuck. I didn't know the term and didn't care. I was focused on finding Isabella. 5 minutes later, Isabella and Emily emerged from a room, tears streaming down their faces. They spotted me and came over, and we embraced in a group hug. "He's gone, Michael," Isabella half-wailed. "He died a few minutes ago. The doctor said it was a massive heart attack. He's gone." Stunned into silence, I hugged the 2 women as they sobbed. Emily, also a French citizen, had been married to John for 35 years. They wed at 20 and moved to the US when John got a job with an American software company at the dawn of the computer age. They have a daughter, Mia, who is 3 years older than my daughter, Amelia. The girls look so alike they could be sisters. I knew this would be especially hard on Mia. Just then, one of the EMTs approached me and asked if I was Isabella's husband. When I said I was, he handed me Isabella's purse, explaining she left it in the ambulance. As I took it, I noticed a bra stuffed inside. Confused, I looked again and confirmed it was a bra. Amid the chaos, I realized I hadn't really looked at Isabella when she first came out. Now I noticed she was indeed brayless. Odd, I thought to myself. I don't remember how long we stayed at the hospital with Emily before she decided she needed to go home. Mia would be arriving from her university in the morning, and Emily needed to get some rest. I drove Emily home, then took Isabella and myself back to our house. I figured I could help both women retrieve their cars the next day. Emily's from the emergency room lot and Isabella's from work. Isabella didn't say a word when we walked in. She went straight to the main bathroom and got in the shower. 20 minutes later, she joined me in the family room, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She sat on the sofa, and I left my lazy boy to sit next to her, pulling her into a tight hug. She was breathing raggedly, her body shaking with sobs. I wanted to ask about the brayless thing, considering she was supposed to be working with John, but I didn't have the heart to bring it up. Instead, I held her quietly for another 20 minutes until she said she was tired and wanted to go to bed. It was midnight, so I decided to turn in with her. The next morning, I called in for a personal day. After getting a shower and shave, I offered to take Isabella to the office to get her car. She suddenly looked stricken and started to stammer, needing a moment to calm down. She asked me to take her to Emily's instead. They planned to take a cab to the office to gather some of John's things, and then drive to the hospital to handle paperwork and collect John's personal effects. I offered to help but was quickly rebuffed. That actually worked out well for me. I needed to find the EMTs from the night before and get some questions answered. After dropping off Isabella at Emily's and getting a brief update on how she was doing, I got back in the car and headed straight to the hospital. I quickly found out the names of the EMTs who had handled the emergency and where to find them. I found the EMTs at the fire station where I was directed, and they remembered me from the night before. I focused on the one who had handed me Isabella's purse. His name had agreed James, and I asked him directly where the run had started. For the second time in a short while, someone stammered out an answer to me. "What do you mean?" he asked, suddenly eyeing me suspiciously. "My wife and John were supposed to be working, but you didn't pick them up at Softal, did you? Isn't that why you referred to me as cuck?" "Oh, shit. Jesus, buddy. I didn't mean anything personal," he said, raising his voice. "It's just that we've seen enough of these runs where the two people checked into a room aren't husband and wife, and when the shit hits the fan, we're the bad guys. Shoot the goddamn messenger." "Easy, James. I'm not trying to stick you with anything. I'm just trying to get to the truth. I had to look up cuck, and I didn't like what I saw, but that's not your problem. It's mine if you tell me you picked them up any place other than Softal." "We started the run at the West Side Hotel," James answered. "Seems they were about 15 minutes into it when the guy just grabbed his chest and keeled over on your wife. She actually had to push him off of her to get to the phone to call 911, and in the meantime, she gave him mouth to mouth. He was barely alive when we got him to the ER. I had the truth. I didn't need more. I thanked them both and left, feeling their pitying eyes on me as I walked away. My mind was reeling as I drove home. Isabella was making love to John when he nearly died of a heart attack. How long had this been going on? Then it struck me. Thunderstruck me. Our daughter Amelia and John's daughter Mia didn't just look alike by coincidence. They were sisters. Isabella had been sleeping with John for at least 19 years. How had I not seen this before now? What a trusting idiot I was. Isabella and John worked late at least once a week, sometimes twice, and then there were the occasional girls' nights out or work crew nights. What about the business trips they took together? How did Emily not know? I'll admit I can be clueless, but how could a woman be that clueless, especially with the girls looking so much alike? And Emily was always around the business, Isabella noted, dropping in at all hours just to say hi to her husband, or to her. I thought they were good friends. How could Isabella do that to Emily? When I got home, Isabella's car was in the garage. She was sitting in the family room, drinking a glass of wine. The look on my face must have shown my anger. "What's wrong, sweetie?" she asked. Although I wanted to play it cool, my anger got the best of me, and I couldn't hold back. "How long have you been sleeping with John?" I blurted out, venom dripping from my voice as my volume rose. "He's Amelia's father, isn't he?" Isabella dropped her wine glass and shot up from the sofa. How could you say such a horrible thing to me?" she screamed, practically charging at me. She stopped about a foot from me, eyes glaring. If looks could kill, I would have been dead on the spot. I wasn't about to back down. I knew I was right. I held my ground, glaring back, but I did cut my volume to a whisper as I hissed, "Tell me to kiss your ass, but don't dare lie to me and tell me I'm wrong. I'll knock your teeth down your throat if you lie." Never before in our 20 years of marriage and our relationship before that had I cursed at my wife, let alone threatened physical harm. To say she was shocked was an understatement. Her mouth flew open as if she was going to respond, but then she realized I was serious, and the lie died in her throat. She also took a quick step back. Maybe it was the flames in my eyes. "You killed him, you know," I said as she sat back down on the sofa, ignoring the spilled wine on the carpet. The stress of cheating, combined with the physical activity, was probably too much for his heart. I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner, considering how much you both were into it. I could see by the stricken look on her face that I had hit a nerve. She looked down at her hands, fidgeting for what seemed like minutes, but was probably only 10 seconds. "Oh my God, do you think I really killed him?" she asked quietly. I wonder if Emily is thinking that too. Why would Emily be thinking that, unless she knew about the two of you? Did she know? She knew and approved almost from the beginning, Isabella said quietly. Sometimes she even joined us, especially on business trips. She always told me she thought it was right, that I should get pleasure from John for being such an important part of his business success. She was glad I took care of him in the office while she took care of him at home. I felt dizzy and confused. I took a seat. So I was the one out in left field, the only one not in the know? What about Amelia? Amelia has known for the last 4 years. She's good with it. Oh shit, Amelia knows and she's good with it. Damn, I howled. But that's actually not what I meant. Emily knows that Amelia is John's child. Emily knows and she's fine with it. Mia knows too. Well, I hope you all had several good laughs at stupid old Michael's expense. Even my daughter, his daughter, I guess, knew and didn't tell me. Wonderful. I stormed out of the house, needing space to process everything. I drove to a local park and sat there for a couple of hours. Isabella called my cell a few times, but I let the calls go to voicemail. I just sat there, thinking. I had always considered myself a smart guy, but when it came to Isabella, I was a complete fool. I had trusted her completely, never suspecting her of cheating. I probably ignored several semi-obvious signs over the last 19 years. I wondered if there were others besides John. My mind was a blizzard of thoughts. As it started to get dark, I left the park and drove home. When I entered the house from the garage, I saw a small light on in the kitchen above the table. Isabella was sitting in her usual spot with a cup of tea in front of her. She offered me a cup, but I declined and went to the liquor cabinet for something stronger. I poured a scotch and sat down in my chair across from her. "I can't even begin to tell you how sorry I am for hurting you," Isabella said quietly, looking down at her hands. "I need to know the whole story now," I said, my voice edged with anger. "You need to tell me how you could do this to me while telling me you loved me. You need to tell me if you ever really loved me and respected me. Don't you dare doubt my love for you, ever," Isabella said with urgency in her voice. "I've always loved you and still love you. It's just that I also loved John. Some people think you can only love one person at a time, but I know that's not true because I loved two." "Spare me. Get on with it," I said flatly. Isabella had joined Softel when the company was about a year old. As with many small companies, the few employees wore several hats, worked long hours, and became emotionally close. It was an exciting time for her, and I remembered her telling me about the struggles during our dates. She and I had been dating for about a year when she joined the company. As the company grew and became successful, Isabella became John's right-hand person. He was the dynamic face of the company, while she was the glue that held everything together. She was an excellent multitasker, and John grew dependent on her as his other half. At the same time, our relationship was heating up away from the office, and Isabella and John's relationship was intensifying at work. It was as if her personal and work lives were running parallel. Although Isabella and John kept things professional in front of the rest of the office, they became more attached when they were alone, discussing everything from work to personal matters. She was 24, beautiful, with an athletic body and long blonde hair. He was 34, well-built with long, wavy brown hair, an endearing smile, and an almost old-world courtliness. It felt almost natural when they first made love on an old sofa in his office at the end of a long day, Isabella remembered. Because it felt so natural, Isabella said she never had any guilt over sleeping with both me and John, even when she and I got married a year later. It wasn't lust, it was a complete loving bond, similar but yet different from the one she and I shared. But she knew she could never tell me about it because of how I viewed infidelity. She loved both of us and didn't want to give up either. While I was kept in the dark, John told Emily about the affair after a couple of months. When he and Isabella realized the affair would be long-term, he wanted to be honest with his wife, who had just given birth to their first child. Emily and Mia would always have the largest place in his heart, John told her, but he wanted to keep a piece of his heart for Isabella. Emily then invited Isabella to spend a weekend with John and her. I remembered her going away for the weekend under the pretense of an ill mother, and after that weekend, gave her blessing to the affair. When Isabella got pregnant several years later, it was Emily who took a worried Isabella into her heart and decided how the narrative would go if the child was indeed John's, since John and I both had a plus blood that took care of the easy part. And since I was almost never around both girls together by myself, whenever someone noticed the girls' resemblance, Emily or Isabella would make some sort of flip remark about me getting around, before laughing it off as sheer coincidence. Both women knew that if I had a chance to think about it, I might get suspicious. Emily looked upon Isabella almost like a younger sister, and was, in fact, proud of John's little family, Isabella noted. I sat dumbstruck during Isabella's confession, no recollection, as at no point did she express regret for what she had done. She was merely recalling events. Isabella stopped talking and looked at me, expecting me to say something. The only thing I could think of at that moment was to ask if she and John even took a break when we were first married and making love virtually every day of the week. She looked sheepish and finally answered no. That was such an exciting time in my life. I had two handsome men who loved and desired me, and I was extremely horny all the time, she said. On the days that John and I made love, I always made sure to give myself a good wash downstairs in case we did the same. Yes, sometimes you did get sloppy seconds, but I tried to keep that to a minimum. Awfully considerate of you, I mumbled. It's funny, but in all these years I've never compared the two of you, she continued. You were both good lovers, kind and attentive, and about the same size. It wasn't better with John, just different, because of who each of you are, or... I have to admit that I was somewhat comforted by the fact that it wasn't just lust, but at the same time, I was hurt to the core by her admission that she loved him as well as me. I was raised to believe in one partner per person, one intimate soul for each of us. And while I might have been the one getting most of her intimacy, there was another out there sharing with me. Isabella put down her tea and stared into my eyes, trying to stare into my soul, I thought. I didn't have an answer to her unasked question, nor did I have any sage words. I put away my doers in the cabinet, placed my glass in the sink, and headed upstairs to bed. Why? I'm not sure, because I knew without a doubt I wouldn't get any sleep that night. Isabella joined me in bed about 5 minutes later, curling up against my back. I pretended to be asleep, avoiding the need to even say goodnight. I got up at my usual 5 a.m., went through my morning routine, and headed off to work. Isabella was still in bed when I left, indicating she didn't plan to go into Softal. I figured she and Emily would need to sort out the aftermath of John's passing. That was their problem now. As for me, I had my own issues to resolve. Work has always been a refuge for me during tough times, and I hoped it would continue to be. I work at Mayon Pharmaceuticals as the Vice President of Sales. Despite being 45, I'm considered part of the new breed in the industry. My background in chemistry gives me a unique advantage. Unlike many in sales leadership, I understand our products inside out. I've even played a role in developing one of our successful products, coincidental, which helps reduce women's libido. It's been a profitable venture for us, and I've personally benefited from its success. I also earn a comfortable salary, and combined with Isabella's income, we've enjoyed a prosperous life. A stylish home in a trendy neighborhood, 2 nice cars, and memorable vacations. Financially, neither of us will suffer when we inevitably divorce. There it was, the dreaded D word. I hadn't seriously considered it until now, but it seemed like a foregone conclusion from the moment I discovered Isabella's infidelity. With Amelia away at college, there didn't seem to be a compelling reason for us to stay together. Apart from the emotional devastation Isabella caused me, this decision shouldn't be too complicated. My boss, Robert Davis, and I have been colleagues for 18 years. After spending 5 years as a chemist at another pharmaceutical company, I met Robert at an industry convention where we hit it off. He suggested I transition into sales, and shortly after, he offered me a position at his company. Intrigued by the challenge, I made the move. Robert's assessment of my skills proved spot on, and both of us have reaped the rewards. Beyond our professional relationship, Robert has proven to be a genuine and supportive friend over the years. He's been married to his wife, Lauren, for 3 decades, has 2 grown children, and proudly boasts 5 grandchildren. At 52, he's as energetic and sharp-witted as ever. He's not only intelligent but also unafraid to surround himself with other bright minds, myself included. When I confided in Robert about Isabella's infidelity and my decision to divorce her, he was visibly taken aback. He asked if I was certain about her cheating, to which I affirmed without delving into specifics. Robert didn't pry further, understanding that I would share more when ready. However, he did offer practical support by providing me with the contact information for Maywan's attorney, who handles divorce cases. Robert trusted their services and believed they could assist me efficiently given our financial situation. Robert insisted I take as much lost time as needed, but I assured him that I only required a few hours here and there. I believed it would be a straightforward process, considering we lived in a no-fault state and both desired an amicable resolution for the sake of our daughter, Amelia. We also had separate pension plans and agreed to divide the proceeds from the house. I couldn't have been more wrong. When I returned home from work that evening, Isabella had prepared my favorite meal, spaghetti supreme, and opened a bottle of Merlot. Despite my preference for distilled spirits over wine, the gesture was heartfelt. Under such pressure, it's understandable to forget certain details about each of your partners. Isabella maintained her usual lively chatter during dinner, acting as if everything were normal between us. After about 10 minutes, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room and uttered those dreaded 4 words no spouse ever wants to hear. We need to talk. No, we don't, she snapped back sharply. I was taken aback by her response and her tone. She knew I had discovered her long-standing affair with her boss, John, someone she knew I vehemently opposed. How could she possibly believe I would overlook this betrayal? I hoped we could discuss this like mature adults before I proceed with legal action, I managed to say calmly. You can do whatever you want, but I'm not giving you a divorce, she retorted, irritation evident in her voice. The fact is, you love me, and I love you, and I won't let you go. I'll fight this every step of the way. You're being foolish and risking the best thing you've ever had just because your pride is hurt. Before I could respond, she continued, cutting me off, did I ever give you a reason to doubt my love before you found out about John and me? Did I ever neglect you in any way? You received all the affection you desired, and I took care of you in every aspect, physically, mentally, emotionally. Aren't we each other's best friends? If I hadn't discovered this by chance, you would have carried on loving me until the end, never knowing, she argued. Can't we just go back to that? No, because I did find out, I countered firmly. Your actions prove you don't love me as deeply as you claim. You gave yourself to another man, body and soul, knowing it was wrong and keeping it hidden from me for 2 decades. Deception isn't love. It's bad enough you've been having an affair for 20 years, but to admit you love him too, to be intimate with him in ways you were with me. How is that loving me? Do you realize that every bit of love you gave him, you were stealing from me? I confronted Isabella. I had enough love for both of you, she shot back defiantly. He understood that, but I knew you wouldn't, so I kept it from you. And now you're proving me right. He understood, so I wasn't man enough because I wouldn't accept you having a pseudo-husband on the side. That's nonsense. I retorted angrily. I wasn't foolish enough to allow you to deceive me willingly. You made this decision for yourself by yourself. This was all about your desires, and you got what you wanted. If I hadn't found out, I would have lived my life blissfully ignorant, the world's happiest fool. You could have engraved it on my tombstone. Here lies Michael Johnson, world's happiest fool. He thought life was perfect because he had no idea his wife had 2 husbands. The funeral and viewing took place 3 days later, on a Monday. I chose not to attend either. I went about my morning routine as usual, went to work, and returned home to find Isabella and Amelia still in their funeral attire in the kitchen. I approached my daughter, who had come home from college for the occasion, intending to hug her. However, she recoiled at my touch, turned away, and quietly cried. Isabella touched my forearm gently, shaking her head to dissuade me from further attempts. Under normal circumstances, I would have respected Amelia's reaction and backed off, but nothing was normal anymore. I growled softly under my breath, grabbed some clothes and toiletries, and left the house. Isabella bombarded my phone with calls as soon as I walked out, but I ignored them all, letting them go to voicemail. I had to give credit to Amelia for one thing. Unlike her mother, she wasn't pretending everything was fine. Somewhere along the way, she had decided I was the villain in this story, and she was determined to make me pay. If her goal was to break my heart, she succeeded. Not only was she not my biological child, but now she had made it clear she no longer considered me her father emotionally. This situation was only getting worse by the minute. On Tuesday, I took time off work to visit the bank and divide our accounts. I closed our joint credit cards, opened a new one in my name only, and scheduled an appointment with the lawyer recommended by Robert for Thursday. By then, I hadn't slept in 3 days, and the exhaustion was starting to catch up with me. When I met with the lawyer, William Miller, on Thursday, I hoped he was better than his ordinary name suggested. I briefed him on the affair in detail and expressed my desire for a swift divorce, ensuring I received my fair share. I also instructed him to pursue child support from John's estate for Amelia. If she was no longer my responsibility, then her biological father should step up. I'm done being a fool, I told William firmly. William seemed confident that we could proceed smoothly, but cautioned that if Isabella contested the divorce, it could lead to mandatory counseling and a prolonged legal battle. I instructed him to proceed regardless. The following Monday, Isabella was served divorce papers at Softal, likely at 10:07 a.m., because at 10:08, our receptionist informed me of an angry call from Isabella on line 3. Throughout the week, I ignored Isabella's calls and texts to my cell phone, letting them go to voicemail. However, I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. I instructed Evelyn, our head receptionist, to put Isabella through to me directly when she called again. "You unbelievable asshole." Isabella's voice rang through the receiver, but I hung up immediately. 15 seconds later, the phone rang again. "Don't you dare hang up that damn phone." Her second attempt was cut short as I ended the call once more. I wondered how long it would take her to realize she needed to approach me civilly if she wanted to communicate. The third call came after a longer pause. This time, Isabella spoke in a controlled whisper, clearly making an effort to contain her emotions. "You win round 1. We need to talk," she said. "Fantastic," I replied with forced cheerfulness. "Call my attorney, William Miller, and schedule a meeting. You might want to bring your own lawyer, too. It could speed things up." The meeting was set for 2 weeks later. Until then, I stayed in a nearby motel, visiting the house occasionally to mow the lawn and collect my belongings. The first time Isabella saw me arrive, she attempted to greet me warmly, moving in for a hug in the driveway. I physically pushed her away and walked past her into the house, ignoring her attempts to reconcile. "You didn't need to air our troubles out there in the driveway," Isabella said, her voice tinged with frustration. "Hey, if I'm such an asshole, just divorce me," I deadpanned. The meeting with the attorneys was scheduled for Friday afternoon at 3. As a gesture of courtesy, I let Isabella present her case first. She pleaded her love for me, emphasizing that despite her relationship with John, I had always held the primary place in her heart. With John now gone, she believed we could move forward and salvage our marriage. "Are you really willing to throw away 20 wonderful years over this?" she implored. "Could our love have meant so little to you?" "No, it's precisely because our love meant everything to me that I can't continue this marriage," I responded firmly. "You had my complete trust, and you betrayed it. You deceived me, knowing it was wrong, just to have both of us emotionally and physically. John may have accepted it, but I was deceived into it. This divorce isn't my fault. It's about your betrayal and selfishness. I could never have accepted sharing you physically with another man, but sharing your love with him crosses an even greater line. It hurts more than if it had been a brief affair. You loved him and even had his child. Not knowing doesn't make it right. You both took from me. It's fortunate he died that day of a heart attack." Isabella gasped at my final statement, and tears were already welling in my eyes. In all of this, you've never once apologized for cheating on me, I continued. You're sorry for hurting me, and sorry you got caught, but I don't believe you regret a single thing you did. Michael, I believe we can work through this. Please reconsider the divorce, she pleaded. Our part, it was our marriage, Isabella. There wasn't supposed to be an our part and your part. There was only supposed to be us, forever. William glanced over at Isabella's attorney and stated firmly, I think we're done here. Your client needs to sign the paperwork and get it back to us. Isabella's attorney, a serious-looking middle-aged African-American woman, nodded solemnly and extended her hand for William to shake. Over the next couple of weeks, minor details were ironed out, and 3 months later, our divorce was finalized. 2 days after the divorce was official, I instructed William to file a lawsuit against John's estate for what amounted to child support and college expenses, though it sounded more polished in legal terms. Perhaps I wouldn't have taken this step if Amelia hadn't made it clear after the funeral that she wanted nothing to do with me anymore. 18 years of raising that child as my own, and this was the respect I received. She had 4 years to stew over it after Isabella filled her in, and in her eyes, I was no better than a fool. 14 years of devoted fatherhood wasted. So, no, I had no qualms when William suggested we recoup that lost respect with real dollars, exactly 1 million of them. I appreciated William's approach. I anticipated a call from Emily after she was served, but instead, it was Isabella who rang. Perhaps Emily thought I would take the news better from her, but she miscalculated. Is this just another way to get back at me? Are you in financial trouble? Isabella demanded when I answered. Well, hello, Mrs. Johnson. Nice of you to call, I retorted, fully aware of her intentions. Do you realize how bad this makes you look? She shot back. Do you realize I raised another man's child for 18 years while you, Emily, and John were having a grand old time at my expense? And now that child thinks I'm nothing but a fool? I couldn't care less what any of you think. I hung up without saying goodbye. I suspect Isabella relayed my stance to Emily and emphasized how stubborn I could be when I knew I was right, because instead of negotiating with William, she eventually sent me a check for the full $1 million. As it turned out, a few months later, Emily easily afforded that million because she sold Softal to a Japanese company for $8 million. With John out of the picture, it seemed like a savvy business move. This is where the story could have ended, but as the old newsman Paul Harvey used to say, and now for the rest of the story. 2 days following Softal's sale, $2 million landed in an account under my name in the Cayman Islands. It was my finder's fee from Nakatomi Ult for facilitating Softal's acquisition within 9 months, as stipulated in a deal I inked with an anonymous Nakatomi attorney. The terms were clear. If Nakatomi acquired Softal by a specified date, I'd receive the fee. Otherwise, the deal was off. Now you might be wondering how I managed to play a role in the Softal deal. It's a bit convoluted, and I admit I wasn't entirely forthcoming earlier in this tale. Much of what I've shared is rooted in truth, but some was crafted around a performance that might have earned me an Oscar, given how convincingly clueless I appeared. Let me clarify. I was indeed clueless up until about a month before John's passing. That's when a Nakatomi attorney approached me seeking assistance in brokering a deal with John for Softal. Why me, aside from Isabella being John's right-hand woman? I asked, genuinely puzzled. Because we know you're smart, and we believe you're up for the challenge and the payoff of outmaneuvering the man who's been deceiving you behind your back for years, the attorney explained. To say I was stunned would be an understatement. Isabella had been cheating on me, and this Japanese representative knew about it. Unbelievable. It turned out Nakatomi had thoroughly researched several firms, leaving no stone unturned. They had uncovered everything about John, Isabella, Emily, and both daughters. They rightly assumed I'd be motivated to assist them. However, time was of the essence. They were considering other software firms, and I had a strict 9-month deadline to deliver results. First, they presented me with incontrovertible evidence of Isabella's infidelity. Photos, videos, phone records, travel receipts, everything I needed to expose their affair. Then came the offer, Despite my comfortable financial situation, they dangled a $2 million carrot to help wrest Softo from John. At that point, I would have helped without any payment, but I wasn't about to reveal that. I needed to strategize carefully, ensuring the money landed after our divorce, so I wouldn't have to split it in our no-fault state. But first, I needed to compose myself, ensuring I didn't give anything away. So, I played it cool and continued acting oblivious, a role I had perfected over 2 decades. What difference would a little longer hurt? I did confide in Robert about what I had discovered regarding Isabella and John, but I withheld the details of how I came to know. Late one night at the plant, with a bottle of Don Julio tequila between us, we brainstormed ideas for my next steps. After we had consumed about half the bottle, Robert looked at me seriously and remarked, "Damn, isn't it ironic that the guy who invented coincidental has his wife sleeping with another man? You should have slipped some of that stuff to her, Michael." That comment sparked a realization, though I kept it to myself around Robert for obvious reasons. Not to her, I mused silently. I should have slipped some of that stuff to him. Hey, wait a minute, 2 birds with 1 stone. One of the benefits of coincidental is its minimal contraindications compared to other major drugs. In fact, there's only one caveat, if taken as prescribed. It's not meant for men at all because, while effective in reducing a woman's libido, it inexplicably raises men's blood pressure and can lead to a fatal heart attack. All I needed was to get some into John's hands. John and I were both members of the same golf course and occasionally played together with 2 others as a foursome. I arranged a tea time for us the following Saturday, with a planned lunch break after the first 9 holes. The first half of our round went smoothly, and during our lunch break, knowing my skills as a salesman, I casually glanced over at John and remarked, "Hey buddy, you feeling all right? You seem a bit worn out." The other 2 guys and I were all about a decade younger than John, and he was aware of it, so my comment did seem to affect him. I could see him pondering over it, his age possibly weighing on his mind. When I suggested we could push back the next tea time by 30 minutes to give him more rest, he responded, "Nah, I'm just a bit tired, but there's no need to adjust anything for me. I'm good," he said confidently. Truthfully, I didn't think he looked tired at all, but I was playing into his insecurities about being the older guy in our group. "I've got just the thing for you, buddy," I said as I pulled out a small bag of unmarked white pills from my front left pants pocket. "Something I take every day with lunch. Keeps me going strong all day." I handed John the bag with 5 pills inside. "Take one of these over the next few days. If you like it, I'll get you more next time we hit the links." John picked 1 pill out of the bag, swallowed it with his bourbon over ice, and thumped his chest playfully while letting out a small Tarzan yell. "Let's go, boys. I'm feeling fired up," he said with a good-natured grin. Indeed, within a few minutes, he did seem to be energized. A spike in blood pressure can pump you up, which is why athletes aim to be in peak condition for their games, but too much of a good thing. And why did I choose a small baggie instead of a pill bottle or pill box? Simple, it was disposable. Once John finished the pills, he tossed the baggie away, eliminating any evidence if someone searched his clothes after the inevitable happened on Wednesday night. Those 5 pills were timed perfectly to last until Wednesday, the usual night for John and Isabella's rendezvous. Combine a man's naturally heightened blood pressure during intimate moments with a drug that further elevates it, and you have a recipe for a fatal heart attack. Since it mimicked a typical heart attack, and our small city lacked an extensive crime scene investigation unit, it wouldn't be scrutinized further unless something appeared suspicious. I played my role of the unsuspecting husband flawlessly, mirroring my behavior from when I first discovered the affair a month prior. I have to admit, even I impressed myself with my acting skills. 2 days after the money hit my account and was swiftly transferred elsewhere, I treated Robert and his wife to a lavish dinner. Ostensibly, it was a gesture of gratitude to Robert for his unwavering support during my tough times. Little did he know, it was actually a thank you for planting the seeds of my revenge. With John out of both women's lives, the relationship between Isabella and Emily cooled significantly. Emily couldn't shake the image of John dying practically in Isabella's arms, which put a strain on their bond. I heard through the grapevine that Emily was particularly angry that Isabella couldn't sway me to drop my lawsuit against the estate for child support arrears. What Emily didn't realize was that Isabella wasn't entitled to any of that money because we had already finalized our divorce by then. Emily terminated Isabella shortly after settling my support claim, and word spread in the professional circles about John and Isabella's affair, effectively putting an end to Isabella's career in business administration. It's never good for one's career when such scandals come to light, especially in such a dramatic manner. But don't feel too sorry for Isabella. She emerged from the entire ordeal with a net worth of around $1 million, so she won't be destitute anytime soon. She'll also be able to support her daughter, Emily's needs. Yes, you heard that right, her daughter. Amelia made it abundantly clear to me that she wanted nothing to do with me after John's death, rejecting my attempts to connect with her multiple times. I suppose that's the thanks I get for raising her, providing for her, coaching her soccer teams, and attending all her dance recitals. Well, I won't make that mistake again. As for me, I'm doing reasonably well for someone who lost the love of his life after 2 decades. It took some time, but I eventually dipped my toes back into the dating pool. Yet, I'm uncertain if I'll ever fully trust another woman again, or if anyone can measure up to what I thought I had with Isabella. Nevertheless, I'm financially comfortable with a net worth of approximately $5 million. I've entered semi-retirement, focusing now on special projects for Mayon. Perhaps one day I'll invent a pill that allows clueless husbands to detect infidelity immediately. Now that would truly be a service to mankind. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.